The market opens, and it feels like the beginning of a storm. The screen lights up in green and red price bars racing forward, braking, reversing, exploding without warning. To the outside world, it's just numbers. But to the traders staring into those screens, every tick is a heartbeat, every candle a surge of adrenaline. His palms are sweating. His pulse is faster than the clock counting seconds. He leans forward in his chair, gripping the mouse like a weapon, scanning 3 monitors at once. Somewhere deep down he knows he should wait, follow his plan, keep calm. But calm is the first thing the market takes away from the unprepared. And today the market is screaming. He remembers the high of last week. That perfect breakout trade. The one he rode like a wave, doubling his account in a matter of hours. The memory glows like fire in his mind. The rush of seeing his profit number jump higher and higher. The thought that maybe, just maybe, he's figured it out, that this game is his now. That high whispers to him even now. You can do it again. You've done it before. You've tasted what it feels like to be on top. He doesn't want to wait. He doesn't want patience. He wants that feeling again. So he takes the trade. Too big, too fast, but in the moment, it feels right. It feels like opportunity, and opportunity doesn't wait. For a moment, the screen flashes green. His heart leaps. Then, just as quickly, the candle reverses. Red, a sharp drop. His stomach sinks, his mind races. It's just a pullback, it'll recover. Hold, hold. He grips tighter, watching the loss grow. The voice in his head that once whispered promises now shouts excuses. It'll bounce. Just give it a minute. But the bounce never comes. The red gets deeper, the loss bigger. Fear climbs up his chest like fire choking his breath. He should cut it. He knows he should cut it. But fear chains him to the position. Because to cut the trade means admitting he was wrong. It means locking in loss. It means facing the pain now instead of gambling on relief later. And greed, that cruel partner of fear, leans in close and whispers, double down. Get back what you've lost. Don't walk away empty. Against all reason he listens, he adds more. And the market, merciless and cold, swallows his hope whole. The drop continues, faster, deeper, until all that's left is panic. In one day, everything he built disappears. His account is shattered, his confidence gone. The silence of the room presses in on him heavier than the loss itself. The storm outside has passed, but the storm inside still rages. A storm of regret, self-blame, and the endless question every broken trader asks. Why did I do this? Why couldn't I control myself? And yet, while he sits there, destroyed by the chaos of his own emotions, imagine for a moment a man 2,000 years earlier, facing storms far greater than candlesticks and charts. Rome 180 AD. The empire stretched thin, enemies gathering at its borders, plague spreading in its streets. Advisors argued, generals betrayed one another, soldiers threatened mutiny. Chaos was not a metaphor, it was a daily reality. The man in charge of it all was Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome. To hold the throne meant to carry the weight of millions, to face enemies seen and unseen, to bear pressures so crushing they would break most men. But Marcus did something extraordinary. He sat, night after night, in the quiet of his chamber, with nothing but a simple wax tablet and a candle, writing words not to his advisors or his people, but to himself. Words of discipline. Words of reason. Words to remind himself that though the world outside may rage with storms, his mind could remain steady. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Those words, carved in silence 2 millennia ago, speak directly to us now. Because what is the market if not chaos? What is trading if not uncertainty, volatility, and pressure? What is every chart but a battlefield where emotions either conquer us or we conquer them? The difference between the trader who loses everything and the Stoic who endures everything is not circumstance. It is not skill. It is not luck. It is control. The trader sits at his desk surrounded by screens, noise, alerts, fear, greed. The emperor sits in silence surrounded by betrayal, war, and disease. One is broken by his lack of control. The other unbroken because of his control. The storm outside is never the problem. The storm inside is what decides your fate. And here lies the greatest truth that most traders never accept. It isn't the market that destroys accounts. It's fear and greed. It isn't volatility that wipes people out. It's the lack of discipline to face volatility with calm. Every blown account begins not with a bad trade, but with a bad state of mind. Every ruined trader is first ruined by his emotions before his balance sheet. The market is merciless, yes, but it is also neutral. It is simply what it is, moving, rising, falling, doing what it does. The market doesn't care about you. The only thing that decides whether you survive or fall is your ability to master yourself. Think back to that trader we began with. The one chasing every move, doubling down in panic, bleeding money not because of the market's cruelty, but because of his own weakness. That is the fate of most traders. And maybe, if you're watching this, you've felt that pain too. That sick feeling of watching your account slip away because you couldn't pull the trigger to cut a loss. That regret of knowing you broke your own rules because greed whispered louder than reason. That emptiness of staring at the screen after a blown account, wondering why you sabotaged yourself again. And deep down, you know it isn't about the charts. It isn't about the news. It isn't about the strategy. It's about you. About your inability to be calm when chaos strikes. About your inability to master yourself. But here's the hope: mastery is possible. The Stoics proved it. Marcus Aurelius proved it. Epictetus, once a slave, proved it. Seneca, living under a tyrant, proved it. They showed us that no matter the storm outside, we can remain still inside. And that is the lesson traders must learn. Because the market is chaos, yes, but within that chaos there is always opportunity. For the disciplined, for the calm, for the ones who refuse to let fear or greed steer their hands. So picture again those two scenes. On one side, a trader at his desk, drowning in alerts, sweating, panicking, reacting to every candle. On the other, Marcus Aurelius, sitting quietly with his journal, writing, breathing, steady in a world on fire. One man loses himself in the storm. The other finds himself in it. And the truth is, you must decide which one you want to be. Because every time you trade, you are faced with that same choice: to be ruled by your emotions or to rule them, to react or to respond, to be conquered by the market or to conquer yourself. And when you look at it this way, trading becomes more than charts and numbers. It becomes a mirror. Every trade you take reflects not just your system, but your state of mind. Every win tests your humility. Every loss tests your resilience. Every moment of waiting tests your patience. The market is not just a place to make money. It is a place to meet yourself, to see what you are made of, what you can control, and what you must let go. So let this truth settle deep within you: success in trading does not begin with the strategy you use. It begins with the discipline you build. It does not begin with predicting the market. It begins with mastering yourself in the face of what you cannot predict. Because the market will always be chaos. But you can always choose to be calm. And that is why trading like a Stoic isn't just a philosophy. It is survival. It is strength. It is the only way to endure the storms without being destroyed by them. Just as Marcus Aurelius sat in the heart of chaos and found peace, so too can you sit before the storm of the market and remain unshaken. Because in the end, the market will test everyone. It will break those who are ruled by fear. It will devour those who are blinded by greed. But it will reward those who master themselves. So when the next storm comes, when the next red candle crashes down, when the next spike tempts you to chase it, remember this: the real battle is not out there on the chart. The real battle is in here, in your mind. And the one who conquers that battle will always conquer the market. Imagine for a moment that the noise of the trading floor fades away. The blinking red and green numbers of the market screens soften, and you find yourself walking the marble streets of ancient Athens, 2,000 years ago. The world is simpler, yet human struggles are just as complex. People wrestle with greed, fear, ambition, and despair. And amidst this timeless struggle, a man named Zeno of Citium begins teaching something radically practical. A way of thinking that will echo across centuries, reaching us in our modern world of Wall Street charts and trading terminals. This was the birth of Stoicism, not as an abstract philosophy, but as a guide to life, discipline, and resilience. Zeno wasn't a man of fortune when he started. He lost everything in a shipwreck, and in that moment of despair, when his wealth vanished, he could have chosen self-pity or bitterness. Instead, he walked into a bookstore, found writings of Socrates, and realized something profound: that while fortune can take away everything you own, it cannot take away how you respond. That seed of thought grew into Stoicism, a philosophy built not in lecture halls, but in the gritty realities of human struggle. Think about that in the context of trading. Your capital may vanish in one bad trade, but what no market can ever take from you is your ability to control your decisions, your mindset, your discipline. Zeno was only the beginning. From him came the chain of Stoic teachers. Seneca, the Roman statesman and advisor to Nero; Epictetus, a slave who became one of the most influential teachers of philosophy; and Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world, who spent his nights writing to himself about humility, patience, and focus. And isn't that fascinating? The most powerful man in the known world had the same battles we do: inner battles, mental chaos, fear of uncertainty, temptation to react to anger or greed. He could command legions, shape history, and yet when he sat down at night with a journal, he admitted to himself that he, too, needed to master his emotions. Isn't that exactly what we as traders face? We're not commanding Roman armies, but we're facing armies of candlesticks, charts, rumors, and price swings. And every time we let fear or greed decide, we lose our kingdom, our trading account. So what exactly is Stoicism? At its heart, Stoicism teaches one principle so simple, yet so powerful, that it can completely transform a trader's journey. Focus only on what you can control, and accept what you cannot. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. You cannot control whether a stock goes up or down after earnings. You cannot control whether the Federal Reserve changes interest rates. You cannot control if breaking news suddenly shakes the entire market. But you can control your position size, your risk management, your reaction, your discipline, and your emotional state. That's the only battlefield you ever truly own. Epictetus put it in the simplest way: cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Imagine that framed not as a philosopher's maxim, but as a trader's law. A Stoic trader doesn't cry when a position gaps down against him overnight. He journals it, he learns, and he refines his process. The loss is not a personal punishment. It's just reality reminding him you don't control the market, only yourself. Now picture Seneca writing his letters to Lucilius warning about fortune and its tricks. Seneca said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Doesn't that sound like trading? How many people enter markets unprepared, hoping for luck to save them? They trade on rumors, they gamble on options, they bet the farm on earnings calls, and when the market teaches them a harsh lesson, they blame luck. But Seneca would shake his head. He would remind us that fortune is fickle. The only safety lies in discipline. When traders blow up accounts chasing meme stocks, they're not unlucky. They're unprepared. Seneca's Rome had gladiator games and palace intrigues. Our world has CNBC headlines and Twitter feeds. But the principle is identical. Fortune cannot be trusted. Only preparation and inner strength can. Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations wrote to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." If that isn't trading psychology boiled down to a single sentence, nothing is. How many traders panic, sell at the bottom because they think the market is attacking them personally? How many chase parabolic moves at the top, believing they've discovered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? But Marcus reminds us you don't control the outside event, you control your interpretation, your reaction. The market isn't your enemy, and it isn't your friend. It simply exists. Price moves because it moves. Your strength lies in mastering your response to it. Let's make this practical. Ancient Stoics wrote in journals every day. Marcus Aurelius never intended his meditations to be published. It was just him quietly writing to himself, reminding his mind not to fall into arrogance, fear, or anger. Epictetus's students took notes so they wouldn't forget their teacher's lessons. Seneca's letters were essentially extended journal entries. Now compare this with what successful traders do today. They keep trading journals. They write down their thoughts after trades. They track their mistakes, their impulses, their emotions. Why? Because without journaling, you're blind to your own psychology. Without reflection, you repeat the same errors. Journaling is a Stoic practice wearing a modern suit. Marcus wrote to discipline his mind against the chaos of Rome. A trader writes to discipline his mind against the chaos of the market. Let me give you a vivid example. Picture two traders, both holding positions ahead of a major company's earnings report. The first trader doesn't prepare. He's glued to Twitter, trying to predict the announcement. He's filled with nervous excitement, imagining the stock shooting higher, calculating how much he'll make. The number comes out, and the stock tanks. His account gets crushed. He curses his luck. He panics. He blames the company, the analysts, the market makers. He feels betrayed. Now picture the second trader, the Stoic trader. Before entering, he asked, "What can I control here?" He realizes he cannot control the earnings announcement or the market reaction. So he limits his position size, sets a stop, prepares for both scenarios, and accepts the outcome. When the stock tanks, he shrugs. He writes in his journal, "Earnings are uncontrollable. Position size saved me. Discipline kept me calm." He doesn't cry over the uncontrollable. He studies his own response. That trader will survive long enough to thrive. And this is where the parallel between ancient wisdom and Wall Street becomes so powerful. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions, it's about mastering them. It doesn't say, don't feel fear or greed. It says, feel them but don't obey them. Marcus Aurelius felt anger, Seneca felt fear, Epictetus felt pain, but they refused to let those emotions command their actions. That's exactly the difference between traders who last and traders who burn out. A Stoic trader doesn't eliminate emotions, he simply doesn't let them hold the steering wheel. Close your eyes and imagine the visual on one side of the screen. You see an ancient philosopher sitting by candlelight, writing with a quill in his leather-bound journal. On the other side, a modern trader sits at his desk, screens glowing around him, typing into his trading journal, entered too big, felt greed. Next time, follow plan. Two men, separated by 2,000 years, living in different worlds, yet connected by the same principle. Discipline through reflection. That's Stoicism meeting Wall Street. So, when you ask what is Stoicism, it's not a dusty philosophy, it's a living tool. It's Zeno surviving a shipwreck, Seneca writing letters about fortune, Epictetus teaching from slavery, Marcus Aurelius holding an empire together while whispering to himself. You have power over your mind. And in the world of trading, it's you, staring at your screen, knowing that no matter how wild the chart moves, no matter how chaotic the market gets, your real battle is not out there, it's inside. Stoicism is not about predicting the future. It's about preparing yourself to face it, and that's the kind of trader who survives. That's the kind of trader who grows. That's the kind of trader who conquers not the market, but himself. The market doesn't care about you. It doesn't wake up in the morning plotting against you. It doesn't celebrate when you lose, and it doesn't reward you for working harder. It just is. The truth most traders never face until it's too late is that the market itself was never their real opponent. The enemy has always been closer, more familiar, more dangerous than any flashing candlestick or breaking news headline. The enemy is themselves, and once you see this clearly, you can never unsee it. Think about revenge trading. It starts so subtly, almost innocently. You take a loss, maybe a painful one, and you tell yourself it's just part of the game. But then the emotions begin to stir. Anger creeps in. You look at the chart and feel insulted, betrayed. You whisper, "I'll get it back. I'll show the market." Suddenly, your next trade isn't about logic or setups. It's about revenge. You double your size. You ignore your stop. You jump into the first half-decent signal you see. For a few minutes, maybe even an hour, you feel alive, aggressive, in control. And then it happens. The market doesn't bend to your anger. The chart doesn't care about your fury. You're stopped out again, and this time the loss is bigger. Now you're not just down on capital. You're down on clarity, down on self-respect. What Stoicism would whisper in that moment is simple. You cannot control outcomes, only actions. You cannot control the market, only yourself. But revenge traders forget this. They want to control the uncontrollable, and in that act of hubris, they hand over everything. Then there's over-leverage, the silent killer. This one doesn't scream at you, it seduces you. It whispers, "Go big." This setup is perfect. This is the one. You calculate how much you'll make if it works. Your imagination runs wild, and your discipline evaporates. You convince yourself it's logical. You say, "The risk-reward makes sense. I'll manage it tightly." But deep down, you know what's really driving the decision: greed. You're not thinking like a Stoic, who asks, "What is within my control here?" You're thinking like a gambler, hoping fortune will bend in your favor. And when it doesn't, when one candle moves against you, your oversized position turns a small mistake into a catastrophic blow. Seneca warned about this 2,000 years ago. Fortune is fickle, and the man who trusts her too much is doomed to ruin. A Stoic trader sizes positions based on discipline, not dreams. He knows his goal isn't to win big today, it's to stay alive tomorrow. But perhaps the most insidious trap is fear of missing out, FOMO. How many times have you watched a stock explode without you, and felt that burning knot in your chest? You stare at the chart as it climbs, each candle higher than the last, and your rational brain whispers, "It's already gone. The risk is gone." But your emotions scream louder. "Everyone else is making money. You're missing out. Get in now." And so you chase. You click buy at the very top, just before the pullback, and in seconds your joy turns to regret. You didn't enter a trade, you entered a panic. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them." The event, the rally, was neutral. It didn't care about you. But your judgment, poisoned by comparison and envy, made you act irrationally. FOMO isn't about the chart, it's about the story you tell yourself. A Stoic doesn't compare himself to other traders. He focuses only on his own discipline, his own plan, his own lane. And then comes paralysis after loss, the shadow side of revenge trading. This is the trader who gets burned, and instead of fighting back recklessly, he freezes. He sees a valid setup forming, one he knows matches his strategy, but his finger won't click the button. He hesitates. He replays the last loss in his mind. What if it happens again? What if I'm wrong? He watches the setup play out without him. The stock moves exactly as he predicted, and now the spiral begins. Regret, self-doubt, hesitation, more regret. Before long, the trader doesn't trust himself anymore. He's trapped in his own head, and the cruel irony is this: his hesitation is not logical, it's emotional. The loss scared him, and he forgot the Stoic truth: Past pain cannot dictate present action. You cannot control the outcome of this trade, but you can control whether you act on your plan or surrender to fear. Epictetus would remind him, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. A trader must define himself not by wins or losses, but by discipline of action. Here's the key: every one of these traps, revenge trading, over leverage, FOMO, paralysis, stems from the same root cause. The trader wants to control what is not his to control. He wants to force the market to obey his emotions. And the market, like life itself, never obeys. The Stoic solution is radical, almost too simple for the ego to accept. Control only what you can. Control your preparation, control your position size, control your checklist, control your reaction, control your journal. But let go of everything else. The outcome, the news, the candle, the result, that belongs to fortune, and fortune cannot be tamed. So how do you actually live this out in the trading world? Start with something the Stoics would instantly recognize: a pre-trade checklist. Marcus Aurelius began each day reminding himself, "Today I shall meet people who are greedy, arrogant, jealous." He armored his mind in advance. A trader must do the same. Before you click buy or sell, ask yourself, am I acting out of logic or emotion? Is my position sized within my rules? Do I have a stop loss defined, or am I hoping? If this trade loses, will I be able to sleep tonight, or did I risk too much? And most importantly, am I focused on the process I can control, or am I obsessing over the outcome I cannot? Write these down. Make them ritual. Just as the Stoics journaled their battles, you must journal yours. Each morning, remind yourself, I cannot control the market. I can only control myself. Each evening, write, where did I act with discipline? Where did I act with emotion? Without this, you will drift. With it, you will anchor. Picture it visually. On one side of the screen, a trader fuming at his desk, slamming his mouse after a loss, throwing himself into reckless revenge trades, his account melting with each click. On the other side, a different trader breathes deeply, opens his notebook, checks off his pre-trade checklist, sizes responsibly, and enters calmly. Both men face the same market, the same chart, the same conditions. But one is a slave to emotion, the other is a master of himself. One fights the market and loses, the other fights only himself and wins. The biggest enemy in trading has never been volatility, news, or manipulation. It has always been you, your fear, your greed, your hesitation, your revenge. But Stoicism offers the cure. It says, stop trying to control what is not yours. Master what is. Master your mind. Master your actions. The rest is noise. And the day you finally understand this, the day you look in the mirror and admit, the enemy is me, but so is the solution, is the day you stop gambling and start trading. That's the day you become unshakable. Epictetus, a man who was once born into slavery, lived a life where almost everything was outside his control. His body was not his own, his labor was not his choice, his future was uncertain. And yet, from that position of apparent powerlessness, he gave the world one of the most liberating truths ever written. Some things are in our control, and some are not. It sounds simple, almost too obvious to matter, but those words hold the key to every trader's survival. Because whether you sit in a Roman villa surrounded by chaos, or at a trading desk surrounded by screens flashing red and green, the battlefield is the same. Will you waste your energy trying to control what cannot be controlled? Or will you master the few things that belong only to you? Let's start with the trader who doesn't understand this. He believes that the market owes him something. He tries to predict every move, every news announcement, every rumor on social media. He places oversized bets on events he cannot influence. He spends hours stressing over what the Fed might say tomorrow, what an earnings call might reveal, what geopolitical news might explode overnight. He convinces himself that if he just studies harder, if he stares longer, he can bend the market to his will. And yet, every time, reality humiliates him. A sudden downgrade, an unexpected headline, a black swan event, and his account collapses. Not because he wasn't intelligent, not because he didn't work hard, but because he built his castle on sand. He tried to control the uncontrollable. Now contrast him with a different trader, the Stoic trader. This trader knows the truth: the market is wild, chaotic, beyond prediction. So he doesn't waste his strength fighting shadows. He doesn't scream at the screen when a stock gaps down overnight. He doesn't curse fortune when volatility spikes. Instead, he focuses only on what belongs to him. He sizes his position according to his rules. He sets his stop loss before entering, not after. He accepts that once the trade is placed, the outcome is no longer his. What remains his is the decision, the discipline, the risk management, the record keeping. When the market surprises him, and it always will, he shrugs and journals the lesson. His losses are small, survivable. His account lives to fight another day, and over years, This focus on the controllable compounds into the one advantage almost no one else has: longevity. History is filled with examples of this principle, not just in trading, but in leadership. Think of Roman generals who lost battles but preserved their armies. They understood that they could not control the whims of weather, the sudden betrayal of allies, or the overwhelming numbers of an enemy force. But they could control their retreat, their strategy, their discipline. By focusing on what was theirs to command, they lived to fight another day, and in time, they won wars not by clinging to every battle, but by surviving them. A disciplined trader is no different. He doesn't need to win every trade. He doesn't need to predict every outcome. He just needs to preserve his army, his capital, and that comes from obeying the principle of Epictetus: control the controllable, release the rest. Let's make this concrete. What exactly is within your control as a trader? Your risk per trade. That's entirely yours to decide. You can choose whether to risk 1% or 10%. One will keep you alive, the other will bury you. Your stop loss is in your control. You can set it before you enter, and if you respect it, you've already decided the worst-case outcome. Your discipline is in your control. No one can force you to chase a trade. No one can force you to over-leverage. Only you can. Your journaling is in your control. You decide whether to reflect, to analyze, to learn, or to blindly repeat your mistakes. These are your weapons, your shield, your army. If you master them, no market storm can destroy you. And what is outside your control? Everything else. Whether the market gaps down after earnings, whether a central bank shocks the world with an unexpected rate hike, whether a black swan event appears out of nowhere, wiping out weeks of gains in a single day, whether the crowd suddenly turns irrational, sending a stock soaring far beyond reason, you cannot tame any of this. To try is to exhaust yourself, to burn your emotional energy, to tilt at windmills like a deluded knight. The wise trader accepts these as the weather of the market: unpredictable, uncontrollable, indifferent. He doesn't waste his soul fighting the storm. He builds a shelter before it arrives. There's a story of a trader during the great financial crisis of 2008. While most around him were destroyed, he survived. Not because he predicted the crash, not because he was smarter, but because he was disciplined. He never risked more than he could lose. His losses during the crash were small compared to his peers. When the storm cleared, he still had his capital, his clarity, his strength. He lived to see the recovery, while others never returned. That trader understood Stoicism without ever reading Epictetus. He controlled what he could, his risk, his exposure, his mindset, and let go of what he couldn't. That single distinction was the difference between ruin and resilience. The problem most traders face is that their energy flows in the wrong direction. They obsess over CNBC headlines, Twitter rumors, analyst predictions. They argue about macroeconomics they cannot influence. They predict where the S&P will be next quarter, as if the universe takes their forecasts into account. And in doing so, they neglect the only battlefield that matters: themselves. The Stoics remind us constantly, why waste time wishing the world were different? The world is as it is. The market is as it is. Your job is not to control the uncontrollable, but to master your response. Now imagine a visual exercise, one that could save you years of pain. Draw two circles on a piece of paper, one inside the other. In the inner circle, write down what you can control as a trader: your risk per trade, your position size, your stop loss, your journaling, your mindset, your discipline. In the outer circle, write down what you cannot control: market gaps, news events, central banks, rumors, black swans, price direction after entry. Look at this paper every day before you trade. This is your circle of control. If your energy, your emotions, your actions are inside the inner circle, you are living as a Stoic. If they drift into the outer circle, you are doomed to frustration, to exhaustion, to failure. Epictetus would say, freedom is found in focusing only on what is truly yours. For the trader, freedom is found in mastering the inner circle and releasing the outer. And here's where the parallel becomes so powerful. Marcus Aurelius, facing barbarian invasions and plagues, could not control whether enemies crossed his borders or whether disease spread through Rome, but he could control his judgment, his leadership, his example. And he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Replace Rome with market. Replace barbarians with volatility. The principle is eternal. You cannot stop the invasion, you cannot stop the storm, but you can control your army, your discipline, your inner fortress. So the next time you feel anger after a loss, remind yourself the loss was never in your control. What was in your control was how much you risked, whether you followed your plan, whether you journaled the lesson. The next time you feel envy watching a stock skyrocket without you, remind yourself that outcome was never yours. What was yours was whether you prepared, whether you followed your signals, whether you avoided chasing. The next time a black swan event wipes out weeks of gains, remind yourself no one controls black swans. What you control is whether your risk management allowed you to survive. Control the controllable. Release the rest. That is not weakness. That is power. The trader who lives by this principle cannot be broken. He may lose trades, but he never loses himself. And in the end, that is the only mastery that matters. Trading is not a battle with the market. It's a battle with yourself. Every chart you open, every candlestick you watch rise or fall, is not really about price. It's about how your heart responds, how your mind reacts, and how much control you can maintain when chaos hits. This is where Stoicism enters like a guiding light. The ancient Stoics understood something that most traders never realize until it's too late, that the greatest enemy is not the storm outside, but the storm within. And in the world of trading, those storms take the form of greed, fear, panic, hesitation, FOMO, overconfidence, and despair. Think about it. Every trader knows the cycle. You see the market surging upward. You tell yourself you won't chase. But then your emotions whisper. If you don't get in now, you'll miss it. That whisper becomes a roar. Suddenly you click buy at the very top, and almost instantly, the market reverses, crashing down. Now fear grabs your throat. You panic sell. You lock in the loss. And then, as if mocking you, the price turns back up without you. You've just experienced the greed-fear cycle. And this is not the market's fault. It is the fault of unmastered emotions. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." What did he mean? He meant that most of our pain is not from what actually happens, but from the fears we invent in our minds. A trader sees a small red candle and imagines a catastrophic collapse. They see a small drawdown and imagine losing everything. They freeze, they hesitate, they overreact. In reality, the loss is small, the opportunity is still there, the account is intact. But the mind has already lost the battle. And once the mind is lost, the account usually follows. There was once a trader I knew who had studied markets for years. He had the strategy, he had the tools. But every time volatility hit, he froze. He'd watch his perfect setup unfold, but instead of executing, he'd sit paralyzed, imagining all the ways it could go wrong. He was trapped in Seneca's truth, suffering more in imagination than in reality. The Stoics would have said, the problem is not the candle, not the chart, not the outcome. The problem is the emotion attached to it. The mind creates a monster that is bigger than the market itself. Greed, too, is a phantom. You see the market rallying, and suddenly your rational mind is replaced with visions of wealth, cars, freedom. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your discipline evaporates. Greed pushes you into trades you should never take. And then when reality crashes back, fear takes over. The Stoics understood this cycle long before there were markets, long before charts, long before money as we know it. They saw it in war, in politics, in daily life. Greed and fear, two sides of the same coin. Greed is the hunger for what is not yet yours. Fear is the terror of losing what you already have. Both are illusions. Both are emotions, and both destroy traders every single day. Now, how do the Stoics teach us to master this? Not by pretending emotions don't exist. Not by suppressing them until they explode. But by training the mind to anticipate them, to sit with them, and to strip them of their power. The Stoics practiced what's called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Every morning, they would imagine the losses, the setbacks, the insults, the failures that could come. Epictetus would say, when you kiss your child, remind yourself that they are mortal. Harsh words, but powerful. It wasn't about pessimism. It was about preparation. If you already accept that loss may come, then when it does, you are not surprised, not broken, not enslaved by emotion. Imagine applying this to trading. Before entering a trade, you tell yourself, if I lose this trade, what then? You imagine the stop loss being hit. You picture your account slightly smaller, and then you remind yourself, my process is intact. My discipline is intact. I control my risk. I live to trade another day. Suddenly, fear loses its teeth. Loss is no longer a monster. It is simply a possibility you already made peace with. That peace gives you freedom. You can trade without desperation, without attachment, without panic. One trader I mentored began practicing this ritual. Every morning before he opened his charts, he wrote in his journal, today I may lose money. Today I may be wrong. Today the market may humble me. And that is fine. What matters is that I follow my plan. At first, it felt strange, almost like he was inviting failure. But something shifted. He no longer feared a red candle. He no longer panicked when the market went against him. His losses became manageable, his wins became consistent, and his mind, once a battlefield, became calm. Think of the visual: the average trader staring at chaotic screens, their heart rate climbing, their mind screaming, do something. Now contrast that with the Stoic trader, calm, focused, breathing, watching the same screens but detached, like a philosopher observing nature. This is the image of Marcus Aurelius, writing calmly in his journal while Rome burned with chaos. He could not control Rome, he could not control fate, but he could control himself. And that is why his wisdom still echoes through time. As a trader, your Rome is the market. It will burn, it will rage, it will twist and turn. You cannot control it, you cannot predict every move. But you can be Marcus, you can sit with the fire, breathe through the storm, and remain whole. That is the essence of Stoicism in trading, mastering yourself so that nothing outside of you can master you. Now, let's bring it even closer to practice. Next time you feel FOMO, pause and ask, if I miss this move, what then? The truth, nothing. The market will open again tomorrow. Another setup will come, life will go on. Missing one trade is not death, it is simply time. The Stoics would laugh at the desperation of traders who treat every opportunity as the last one on earth. Epictetus would remind you, you may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself can overpower my will. What he meant was simple external events cannot touch the freedom of a disciplined mind. Missing a trade cannot take your freedom, only your emotions can. When fear grips you after a loss, practice the same. Write it down, I lost. So what? Loss was always part of the deal. What matters is that I acted with discipline. Suddenly, the loss is no longer a wound but a lesson, and each lesson compounds just like profits. The Stoics turned pain into wisdom. Traders can do the same. Picture this: a trader takes a loss. Instead of slamming the desk, he closes the position, exhales, and writes in his journal, this trade failed. But my system is alive. I survived. I will improve. That trader is indestructible, because you cannot break someone who accepts reality fully. You cannot shatter someone who has already embraced loss as part of the path. That is the power of mastering emotions. Most traders live in chains. Chained by fear, chained by greed, chained by their own imagination. Stoicism hands you the key. But the key must be used daily. Journaling, visualization, reflection, discipline. These are the exercises. Just like a Stoic soldier trained his mind before battle, you must train your mind before trading. If you wait until the emotions strike, it's too late. You must anticipate them, face them, rehearse them, so that when the storm comes, you have already lived it in your mind. The Stoics were not emotionless. They were not cold robots. They were humans who felt deeply but trained themselves to respond wisely. As a trader, you don't need to kill your emotions. You need to master them. You need to feel fear but not obey it. Feel greed but not chase it. Feel loss but not be broken by it. This is the art. This is the edge. Because strategies, indicators, and systems can all be copied, but emotional mastery cannot. That is your true competitive advantage. So remember this: the market is not your enemy. Your emotions are. And just as Marcus Aurelius sat in the palace at night, writing words that would outlive empires, you too can sit at your desk, writing words that will outlive your trades. A journal of discipline, a record of resilience, a philosophy in action. This is what it means to trade like a Stoic. At the end of the day, the candle does not care about you. The market does not know your name. The only thing you ever truly fight is yourself. And when you win that battle, the market becomes less of a monster and more of a mirror, reflecting not chaos, but the calm within you. That is how you conquer. That is how you master emotions. That is how you trade with the mind of a Stoic. The market is a storm. Every day it howls with noise. Twitter trends scream, buy now. Financial news anchors panic with breaking alerts. Discord groups buzz with predictions, Telegram channels shout signals, and YouTube thumbnails flash rockets and fire emojis promising overnight riches. The noise never ends because the market feeds on attention. But here's the brutal truth: the more you let that noise into your mind, the weaker your discipline becomes. And the weaker your discipline, the faster the market will devour you. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." He wasn't speaking about stocks, forex, or crypto. He was speaking about life's obstacles, but the wisdom applies perfectly to trading. The obstacle in trading is not the chart itself, not the trend, not even the losses. The real obstacle is the noise, the endless short-term distractions that pull you away from your system, your plan, your discipline. And the paradox is this: that very obstacle, the noise, can become the way. If you learn to face it, resist it, and rise above it, then the market's chaos becomes your training ground, and your discipline becomes your unshakable advantage. Imagine the ocean. Waves rise, waves crash, storms appear suddenly, the water churns and foams. That ocean is the market, and most traders are surfers without balance. They chase every wave, jumping from one signal to the next, never steady, always reacting, always falling. But the Stoic trader is not tossed around by the sea. He is a captain on a boat, guided by rules like an anchor and discipline like a sail. The waves roar, but the boat holds steady. The noise screams, but the captain stays focused on the horizon. That is what it means to trade with long-term discipline over short-term noise. Think of the famous investors and traders who lasted decades in the markets. They all had one thing in common: the ability to ignore the crowd. Warren Buffett once said, "The stock market is designed to transfer money from the active to the patient." Patience is discipline. Discipline is the refusal to chase every rumor. Discipline is the art of saying no, no to the hype, no to the panic, no to the temptation of short-term noise. I remember the story of a young trader during the Bitcoin mania of 2017. Every day new coins launched. Twitter threads hyped them. Friends bragged about doubling their money in hours. He couldn't resist. He bought into whatever was trending that week. Some days he made quick gains. But most days he bled, because he wasn't following a system. He was following noise. Months later, the crash came. Everything he had vanished. Not because the market was unfair. Not because he didn't have opportunities. But because he lacked discipline. He let the noise dictate his moves, and the noise betrayed him. Contrast that with another investor, one who ignored the hysteria. While everyone chased altcoins, he stuck to a simple rule: invest only in assets with strong fundamentals and only with money he was willing to lose. He ignored Twitter, he ignored the noise. While his friends panicked in the crash, he was calm. His discipline kept him steady, and when the storm passed, he was still afloat. The lesson is clear: the difference between survival and ruin is not intelligence. It's not luck. It's discipline. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus told his students, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself can overpower my will." Replace leg with account, and you see the wisdom. The market may humble you with losses, may chain you with volatility, may tempt you with false opportunities. But no one, not even the most powerful force, can overpower your will if you choose to guard it. That discipline is the true fortress of a trader. Now let's get brutally practical. What does long-term discipline mean for a trader? It means creating a set of rules and following them as if they were law. Not when you feel like it. Not when it's convenient. Always. Your rules might be simple: only risk 1% per trade. Only trade setups that meet conditions A, B, and C. Never chase after missing a move. Always use a stop loss. Always journal every trade. These rules become your boat. Without them, you drown in the ocean of noise. With them, you sail toward the horizon with clarity. But here's the challenge: rules are easy to write, hard to follow. Why? Because of noise. Every time you open Twitter, you see someone boasting about catching a move you missed. That noise whispers, "Forget your rules, just jump in." Every time you watch CNBC announce a breaking headline, that noise screams, "This changes everything, react now." Every time your friend messages you about a coin that's about to explode, the noise tempts you. Don't miss out, buy it now. The market will never stop feeding you this poison. Your job is to detoxify your mind. Marcus Aurelius had to lead Rome during wars, plagues, and betrayals. Every advisor, every general, every senator whispered noise in his ear. And yet he trained himself to retreat inward, to his journal, to his philosophy. He wrote to himself, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." In other words, noise only hurts you if you let it. The Stoic trader must practice the same. Turn inward, turn to the system, turn to the rules, not the crowd. I once watched two traders during the same trading session. Both saw the same market. The first had no system. He jumped in and out of trades, reacting to every tick, every alert, every news flash. By the end of the day, his account was red, his nerves shattered. The second trader barely touched his keyboard. He waited. Hours passed. Finally, one setup aligned with his rules. He placed the trade, sized it correctly, set his stop, and walked away. By the end of the day, he was green, not because he did more, but because he did less. That is the paradox. Discipline is not about doing more. It's about resisting more. The Stoics trained themselves daily with exercises of restraint. They practiced voluntary discomfort, sleeping on hard beds, fasting, wearing rough clothes, to prove to themselves that they didn't need luxury. Why? So that when temptation came, they were stronger. Traders must practice the same. Every time you resist the urge to chase a move, you strengthen your discipline. Every time you ignore the noise and follow your rules, you sharpen your edge. Every time you journal your mistakes instead of blaming the market, you become harder to break. Picture the visual: a trader sitting at a desk, surrounded by screens full of flashing red and green, news tickers, alerts, tweets scrolling by like a tidal wave. His face calm, his hands steady, his eyes fixed not on the chaos but on a simple checklist. Around him, the ocean of noise rises, but his boat of rules holds him steady. That is the Stoic trader. That is discipline in action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The noise will always stand in your way, but if you use it as training, if you let every distraction remind you to return to your rules, if you let every temptation strengthen your will, then the noise itself becomes the way. It is no longer an enemy, but a teacher. Every false signal teaches patience. Every missed move teaches restraint. Every overhyped tweet teaches skepticism. The noise makes you stronger if you let it. In the end, the traders who survive are not the ones with the fanciest strategies or the fastest internet connection. They are the ones who can sit in silence while the world screams at them. They are the ones who can hold a position when the crowd panics. They are the ones who can let the waves crash, knowing their boat will not sink. This is Stoic discipline. This is the edge that endures when all others fade. So next time you open your platform, remember the market is the ocean, the noise is the storm, and your rules are the boat. Guard them with your life, build them with care, and never betray them, no matter how loud the noise becomes. Because in the end, the market rewards not the loudest, not the fastest, not the most emotional. It rewards the most disciplined. And the discipline you build today will carry you not just through one trade, but through a lifetime of trading. That is how you trade like a Stoic. That is how you let the obstacle become the way. If there's one thing that separates those who drift in the markets from those who master them, it is not intelligence, not luck, not even strategy. It is routine. The Stoics knew this long before a single chart was drawn. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, surrounded by wars, betrayals, and chaos, lived by routines. Every morning he rose and reminded himself, people will frustrate me today, fate may humble me today, fortune may betray me today. And yet my power is not in avoiding these things but in how I respond to them. Every night, he returned to his journal, not to show off, not to publish, but to reflect, to record, to sharpen his soul. This was his ritual. His routine was not just habit, it was armor. And as traders, we too must build armor, because every trading day is a battle, not just against the market, but against our own impulses, fears, and emotions. A Stoic trading routine begins before the first candle of the day. It begins before you even touch the keyboard, before the charts flicker to life. It begins with reflection, a moment of stillness, where you remind yourself why you trade. You tell yourself, today I do not control the market, but I control myself. Today I do not control outcomes, but I control actions. Today I will act with discipline, with patience, with resilience. This is your morning ritual, your Stoic affirmation. Marcus Aurelius would write, today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. He was preparing his mind. As a trader, your interference will come in the form of false signals. Your ingratitude will be the market not rewarding your patience. Your insolence will be losses that arrive even when you did everything right. Your disloyalty will be your own emotions trying to betray your plan. Your ill will be the crowd screaming at you to abandon reason. Your selfishness will be greed whispering to you to risk more than you should. You must prepare for them, just as Marcus did. Then comes the practical step, the morning risk plan. A Stoic trader does not sit down blind. They decide, before the market opens, how much they are willing to risk today. Not in vague terms, but in clear, cold numbers. They write, today, I will not risk more than X% of my account. Today, I will only trade setups that meet my checklist conditions. Today I will not take more than Y trades. Why? Because when the noise arrives, when the heat rises, when greed whispers and fear shouts, you cannot trust your future self to stay rational. You must lock the cage now, in the cool of the morning, before the lion of emotion wakes up. That is the essence of the Stoic morning ritual, reflection, affirmation, risk plan. Now the market opens. The storm begins. Screens flash, alerts ping, Twitter screams, and the chart dances like a wildfire. This is where most traders lose themselves. But the Stoic trader breathes. Literally. Mindful breathing is not some mystical nonsense. It is the anchor of awareness. Epictetus said, there is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond our power. When volatility hits, the breath is your reminder. I cannot control the candle, but I can control my inhale, my exhale, my decision. So you breathe, slowly, deeply. You bring yourself back into the present, away from the storm of imagination. And then you return to your checklist. The checklist is the sword and shield of the disciplined trader. It is the system that protects you from yourself. Every trade must pass through its gates. Does it meet condition 1?
Yes.
Condition 2? Yes. Risk aligned? Yes. If not, the door stays shut. You do not force it open. The market will tempt you, whispering that this time is different. But the Stoic trader remembers Marcus Aurelius' words. If it is not right, do not do it. And so they wait, they resist, they pass on the setups that fail the test, no matter how shiny they appear. And when a trade finally aligns, when all conditions are met, they enter calmly, not with hope, not with fear, with reason. They place the trade, set the stop, and let go, because the outcome is not in their control. Only the action was. And then comes the hardest part: doing nothing. Sitting with the trade as it breathes, as it moves, as the crowd panics, as the alerts scream. Doing nothing is an art, and it is here that Stoic practice becomes invaluable. For the Stoics trained themselves to endure, to sit with discomfort, to remain still when the world around them shook. When a trade goes against you, your emotions will scream to interfere, to tweak, to move the stop, to close early. But the Stoic trader breathes again, remembers the plan, and sits. When a trade goes in your favor, greed will scream to add more, to break the rules, to chase bigger profits. But the Stoic trader reminds themselves, profits are not mine until they are booked, and greed is the enemy of consistency. They stick to their plan. This is discipline in motion, built moment by moment, breath by breath. Finally, the day closes. The candles stop printing. The noise softens. For most traders, this is when they collapse, relieved, exhausted, often unaware of what they even did. But the Stoic trader knows the day is not over until reflection is done. Just as Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations at night, reviewing his own behavior, holding himself accountable, so too must the trader journal. The journal is not about bragging rights. It is not about posting wins on social media. It is about truth. In the journal, the Stoic trader writes: what trades did I take? Which ones followed the rules? Which ones broke them? How did I feel during them? What emotions rose? What did I control today? What was outside my control? And what lesson will I carry into tomorrow? A Stoic trading journal might look like this: date, October 1st. Number of trades 3. Rule adherence 2 followed 1 broken. Emotions felt anxious during second trade, tempted to add size. Outcome, full 1 point to our overall. Lesson: even small deviations from rules add unnecessary stress. Must breathe before entering. This is not numbers. This is philosophy. It is the daily sharpening of the soul through reflection. Marcus Aurelius did not write his Meditations for anyone else. He wrote them for himself, as reminders, as corrections, as affirmations. Your trading journal is your meditations. It is your dialogue with your own mind. It is your tool for mastery. Picture the visual: a calendar overlay on the screen. Morning ritual, reflection, affirmation. Risk plan. During trading, mindful breathing, checklist, discipline. Evening journaling, reflection, lesson learned. The cycle repeats day after day until it becomes second nature, until the noise loses its power, until the emotions lose their grip, until discipline becomes who you are, not what you force yourself to do. That is the Stoic trader's cycle. That is the path to mastery. And yes, it is boring. Yes, it is repetitive. Yes, it lacks the thrill of chasing every shiny move, the adrenaline of gambling. But that is precisely why it works. The crowd will always choose noise over silence, impulse over discipline, thrill over consistency, and the crowd will always lose. The Stoic trader chooses differently. They choose the slow grind, the patient routine, the disciplined reflection. And in doing so, they build something that no noise can break: resilience. Every day, Marcus Aurelius faced temptations, frustrations, obstacles. Every day, he returned to his practice. And every day, you will face the same in the markets. Losses will tempt you to quit. Wins will tempt you to get reckless. News will tempt you to abandon reason. But your routine, your ritual, will bring you back to stillness, back to discipline, back to the path of mastery. The market will never stop being chaotic, but you can stop being chaotic within it. The world will never stop screaming, but you can build silence inside yourself. The candles will always rise and fall, but you can stand steady, morning to evening, through ritual, through reflection, through journaling. That is your edge. That is Stoic trading. That is how you build not just profits but character. And in the end, it is character that outlasts markets. When you step back and look at everything we've covered, you start to realize something profound. Trading is not really about the charts. It's not about the indicators. It's not about whether you caught the bottom tick or sold the exact top. It's about you. The battle has always been inside. The screen is just the battlefield, but the war is fought within the mind, and the trader who cannot govern himself will be governed by fear, greed, and chaos. That's why this journey into Stoicism hasn't just been about philosophy. It's been about survival. Survival in the markets, yes, but even more so survival in the storms of your own psychology. Because every candle on that chart is a test, every trade is a trial, and every outcome is an invitation. Will you respond with discipline, or will you collapse into reaction? The truth is simple, yet it cuts deep. The market does not reward emotion, it rewards discipline. It doesn't care about your hopes. It doesn't bend for your fears. It doesn't pause because you've had 3 losses in a row. The market is indifferent, just like nature itself, unmoved by your desires, unshaken by your pain. It simply is. And that is why the only edge you can ever fully own is your ability to master yourself. When you can walk into the chaos of price action with the calm of a Stoic, you suddenly separate yourself from the crowd. The masses chase noise, but you stand still. The herd reacts in fear, but you remain grounded. The world screams for instant gratification, but you move with patience and discipline. That is the way of the Stoic trader. Let's look back at what you've built. It began with the recognition that most traders lose not because of lack of knowledge, but because of lack of mastery over themselves. You saw how fear and greed, those twin tyrants, drag even the smartest minds into ruin. You heard the story of the trader who chased every move, who mistook activity for discipline, and paid the price with his entire account. And then, in contrast, you saw Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by chaos, betrayal, and pressure beyond imagination, yet sitting with a calm hand writing in his journal, mastering his own mind even when Rome itself seemed to burn. The lesson was clear: trading success does not come from predicting chaos, but from remaining steady within it. From there, we went back to the roots. Zeno, Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, the architects of Stoicism. They lived in worlds of uncertainty, collapse, and fortune's cruelty, yet they built a philosophy that made men unbreakable. Epictetus, born a slave, rose to become a teacher of freedom, not freedom of circumstance, but freedom of the soul. Seneca, advisor to emperors, reminded us that fortune gives and takes but cannot touch the mind of one who chooses to remain centered. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher, king, left us words that still breathe strength into our modern chaos. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And in those ancient words, we found a mirror for our own trading screens. Their battles with fate became our battles with volatility. Their reflections in wax tablets became our trading journals. Their wisdom became our edge. But then we had to confront the enemy. And it was not the market, it was us. Revenge trading, over leverage, FOMO, paralysis after loss. The same mistakes repeated endlessly because we failed to realize that the dragon we were fighting was inside. The trader who hesitates after a loss, who freezes and lets opportunities slip, is not losing to the chart, he is losing to himself. The trader who takes one impulsive gamble after another, desperate to get it all back, is not trading against the market, he is trading against his own desperation. The Stoic response: step back, return to what is in your control. You cannot control outcomes, only actions. That became our compass. That became the foundation for building a pre-trade checklist, a ritual of grounding, a shield against the storm of impulse. And so we moved deeper into the Stoic principles themselves. Epictetus reminded us of the first truth: some things are in our control, some are not. That is the line every trader must etch into his mind. You can control your position size. You can control your stop loss. You can control your risk. You can control your journal. But you cannot control if the market gaps down. You cannot control if a black swan appears overnight. You cannot control what the crowd does. When you confuse these two circles, when you waste energy on the uncontrollable, you drain yourself, you burn out, you tilt. But when you protect your circle of control, you find strength. We saw this principle in action with the case study of the disciplined trader, who, while others blew up in a market crash, survived because his losses were small, calculated, contained. Just as a Stoic general loses a battle but preserves his army, he lived to fight another day. That is control. That is resilience. Then we faced the most dangerous opponent: emotions. Greed that makes you chase the high. Fear that forces you to sell the low. Imagination that multiplies suffering before reality even arrives. Seneca's timeless words, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," rang truer than ever. Traders paralyze themselves not because the loss has come, but because they are living in the shadow of a future loss. They are playing against ghosts. But the Stoics gave us a weapon: negative visualization. Pre-meditation of loss. To rehearse the worst in your mind so that when it comes you are not broken, only prepared. If I lose this trade, what then? Ask it, answer it. Accept it. And suddenly, ego is stripped away. Suddenly, a loss is just a number, not a wound to your identity. The Stoic trader can look at red on the screen and still write lessons in the journal, still breathe, still move forward. And then came discipline, the long-term strength that separates the wise from the impulsive. Marcus Aurelius said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." In the market, noise is the obstacle. Twitter hype, news flashes, the emotional roar of the crowd. But to the Stoic trader, that noise is not a barrier, it is fuel. Every distraction becomes a test of focus. Every temptation to chase becomes a chance to return to rules. The world chases waves, but the Stoic trader remains steady in his boat, guided by rules and principles. The case study of the investor who ignored hype and held to fundamentals reminded us that wealth is not built in seconds but in decades. And in trading, too, long-term systems, rule-based decisions, and patient execution will outlast every flash of noise. From there, we built the routine, because philosophy without practice is dead. So, we laid out the rituals of the Stoic trader, mornings of reflection, affirmations, and risk planning. Days filled with mindful breathing, sticking to the checklist, and resisting the trap of impulse. Evenings of journaling, not just recording numbers, but recording the mind. Wins and losses, yes, but more importantly, controllable and uncontrollable. Just as Marcus Aurelius wrote each night in Meditations, reflecting on his day and his soul, so must the trader reflect, not on whether he won or lost, but on whether he lived true to his principles. Because over time, those reflections become your greatest teacher. They reveal patterns in your behavior, blind spots in your psychology, and strengths in your discipline. They forge you into something unshakable. And now, here you stand, at the close of this journey, ready to ask yourself one final question: will you become the Stoic trader? Not the gambler, not the emotional reactor, not the victim of chaos, but the disciplined master of yourself. Will you build your circle of control and let go of what is beyond you? Will you rehearse loss so that it no longer owns you? Will you ignore the noise and stay true to your system? Will you write your reflections daily and shape your character trade by trade? Because this is the path. This is how you conquer the market. By first conquering yourself. Imagine it. Picture yourself 1 year from now. The markets are the same chaos they've always been. Gaps, spikes, crashes, rallies. Traders around you are still panicking, still chasing, still blowing up. But you are calm. You have a system. You follow your rules. You journal every night. You are disciplined. And because of that, while others burn out, you grow. Slowly, steadily, inevitably. That is what this path offers. Not overnight glory, but unshakable consistency. So here is your call to action: adopt the Stoic practice for 30 days. Just 30 days. Each morning, write down your reflections and your risk plan. Each trade, follow your checklist with discipline. Each evening, journal, not just what you did, but who you were. And at the end of those 30 days, look at yourself. You will see change. You will see strength. You will see a trader not tossed by every wave, but steady at the helm of his own ship. Because in the end, the greatest truth remains the simplest: he who masters himself, masters the market. And so I leave you with this voice, this vision, this challenge: the market is not your enemy. The market is your mirror, and the reflection it shows you, fearful or calm, reckless or disciplined, that is the trader you truly are. Choose now who you will be. Become the Stoic trader.